A lovely good morning to our viewers. Thank you once again for joining us on the Camnet TV Breakfast Show on Friday's edition, where we get to talk about business. We do apologize for starting the show a bit late. This was due to some circumstances beyond our control. However, we have a lot of things that we have lined up for you as we get to talk about a lot of issues with regards to the business world, and not forgetting the issue of the fuel increase. But before we go into details with regards to our topic of discussion this morning, we're going to go into our morning boost, where you need to keep fit as a person when you wake up daily in the morning. And later on, after we are back from our morning boost, I will be joined in the studio by my colleague Prudence Chota. Stay tuned.
Good morning and welcome to our morning boost. And remember always to try do this at home early in the morning before you start your day. This is not the main workout, but this is just to help you get started your day and keep fit. So therefore, let's go. We're gonna keep it easy today. We'll make some aerobics movements. Aerobics is good for you, for blood circulation, to control your blood pressure, and also to make sure that you stay fit. So we're going to make some basic moves in aerobics. Let's go. Very easy. We start with marching. Go. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to our show. Let's go. Step touch. Last one. Hamstring. Last one. Knee high. Last one. Lateral legs. Last one. We're going to put now all the four together. That's what we're going to do. Okay, let's go. Last one. And knee high. Last one. Step touch. Last one. Step touch. Last one. Knee high. And marching. Keep marching, keep marching, keep marching. We're gonna change now. 2 knee each. Let's go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's keep pushing. I know you feel like giving up. Check with your neighbor how many minutes you've done. Let's go. Go. 2 each. Now let's do it faster. Change. 1, 2. 4. 4 each. Last 4. 2 each. 2. 2. 2. 3 each. Go. And march in. Go. How are you feeling on your legs? Let's go now. March, 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 march. Keep marching. We're almost there. Let's go. March, 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 march. My producer is dancing behind the camera. I wish I can show you. Let's march. Let's go. Bring in a B step now. It was a pleasure doing a workout with you this morning. I look forward to another workout with you. Make sure stay fit and enjoy the rest of your day. This is Isaac Matsa, and guess what? I'm signing out. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that morning boost. I hope you did do some 1 or 2 exercise, just to keep your body fit. But anyway, like I said before we went for that morning boost, that I was going to be joined later on in the studio by my colleague, this beautiful lady, Prudence Jot. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Miriam.
How is your morning?
No, the morning is okay. We can't complain. By God's grace, we are alive. We've woken up. So yeah, we can't really complain.
Did you every time when we come here, I always ask you this question: did you exercise a bit?
I always say, Miriam, keeping fit is always important. So you exercise, because that's what we do. We exercise in the morning to ensure that we keep our bodies fit, to ensure that it's easy for us to do our daily errands. But if you are not in good shape, it will always be a problem for you. So always ensure that you keep fit, even as you get to do your daily activities in the morning. It's always important. If you can't do it in the morning, do it in the
Do it at night, yeah, after you knock off from work. Anyway, Prudence, since we started the show a little bit late, we're going to run as quick as possible as we can with our programs this morning, so that we don't get to eat up time.
Yeah,
but anyway,
we get a lot of people a chance to just call us and make their contributions towards some of the happenings in our economy. We know for a fact that yesterday the government decided to increase fuel price by a marginal about
almost close to 5 kwacha, yes. 4 kwacha 50 something way.
Yeah, for kerosene, and of course for pardon me, not
for petrol.
Kerosene, for petrol and for diesel.
For diesel.
Yes, and of course also kerosene. We've seen the price
an issue that I know a lot of people would want to call in and give their contributions. So to you, our viewer out there, who is sitting at home watching us, please do make your contribution with regards to this topic. We'll be able to open our phone lines very soon. And before we go to our topic of discussion, Prudence, I'm aware that we have 2 guests who is going to talk about fuel, and we have someone who's going to talk about inflation, who is the financial analyst, Blessing Kafwaka. He'll be joining us later on in the studio. So right about now, we are going direct to our health corner. It's always important that you get advice from the doctors, Prudence. Yeah. So we are joined by Dr. Sumpungwe, who is going to talk about the role of parents and community leaders in improving adolescent health. Yeah.
Good morning, viewers. This is your doctor, Dr. Kakumsin Pongwe, Assistant Director, Adolescent Health, working from the Ministry of Health. I come from the Medical Women Association of Zambia. This week we've been talking about adolescent health, and yesterday we talked about adolescent health services in Zambia. So we talked about how the ministry is training health workers to provide health services that respond to the needs of young people or adolescents. We also talked about working with peer educators who are adolescents trained to disseminate information to their fellow adolescents. And we also talked about development of materials that help increase knowledge levels of adolescents in various health issues. And we also mentioned that we are not just using one form of channel of communication. We use written materials, television, radio, and social media. So today we'll continue talking about a similar topic. We want to discuss how adolescents or young people can participate in health programs. So as you earlier on heard, we have groups that exist at selected health facilities which young people can be part of. So young people can decide to participate in activities organized by peer educators so that they learn more about health issues and also educate others who don't have that privilege to be part of that group. We are also encouraging in-school adolescents to join and form clubs that talk about health issues affecting young people, so that together they can encourage each other, how they can stay away from risky behaviors, how they can sustain good behavior, and how they can also safeguard their health. Then we also have in some religious settings where there are youth groups, I think young people can also participate, join those groups, participate and learn one or two things on how they can avoid risky behavior and also enlighten themselves in terms of health issues. We also encourage young people to be part of what is happening at clinics. All health clinics have what they call activity plans, a lineup of activities that they intend to undertake in the communities that they serve. So we are encouraging young people living in communities where there are health facilities to engage the health centers so that they can add a voice to what activities targeting young people can be included in the plans that health facilities have to serve the communities they are operating in. There are a number of health programs that take place in the communities. We also want young people to be involved, adolescents to sensitize their peers on what health issues are happening. Like now we have COVID-19. Young people can participate in sensitizing their peers, their friends on what COVID is, the importance of getting vaccinated, and any other health problems, malaria and TB. So we want young people to add their voice to all the health programs that we are implementing in our communities, so that the information we would want to relay to young people is better understood, better packaged, especially if it's coming from young people who the audiences can relate to. So those are some of the activities young people can participate in. I'm also glad to announce that we have, through the Zambia helpline, some toll-free lines that young people can call, 116, 933, and 5600. These are helplines that are available. Young people can call without paying anything to find out about any health issues that affect them and where they can access services within the community they are calling from. So these are some of the things young people can participate in. Just to summarize again, we are saying young people can be part of peer educators groups that work hand in hand with health facilities to educate young people on health issues. They can also be part of school clubs or youth clubs, youth organizations in religious setting. They can participate in activities that clinics plan and undertake in the communities they live in. They can also make use of the toll-free lines 116, 933 and 5600 to obtain information on any health issues, and also to report any abuse happening within their homes and also in the community. Thank you so much for listening today. We'll continue tomorrow with another topic. Continue watching Camnet TV. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for still staying tuned to Camnet TV. That was Dr. Simple Way.
Yeah, exactly. She was just talking about the role of parents and community leaders in improving adolescents' health. You know, she urged young people to add their voices with regard to certain issues that affect them. And I hope our viewers did watch that. And yeah, we always have the doctors in studio every Saturday live. So with regards to those who would want to call direct to find out with regards to certain diseases or get advice from the doctors, they can call in on Saturdays where they are in studio. Yeah, that was a recorded thing we played, but on Saturdays they are ever on studio live.
Yes.
So you'll be able to get them direct and they'll be able to help you with regard to the your question. And also not forgetting Prudence, this health corner, it's up grab for sponsorship.
Yes, Miriam.
So you our viewers who want to continue watching the healthy corner, please yeah, it's up for sponsorship.
You can come up and sponsor that program so that we can continue having the doctors every day on this program to educate us and the listener and educate everyone about important health matters. If you have a burning question about a certain illness or or a disease, you can call through on Saturday when the doctors are live in studio and you can ask those questions that you have. So even right about now, we are going to look into the money market. It's always important to know how is it that our kwacha is faring against other major convertibles. And if you are a business person, I always emphasize on this program that always know how is it that your local currency is performing against other major convertibles, so that when you want to buy goods, you know where you stand. We don't want surprise.
Very important.
So one United States dollar was buying at 17 kwacha 92 ngwe and selling at 18 kwacha 27 ngwe. The kwacha against the British pound was buying at 23 kwacha 54 ngwe and selling at 24 kwacha 00 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the euro was buying at 18 kwacha 89 ngwe and selling at 19 kwacha 26 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the South African rand was buying at 1 kwacha 23 ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 25 ngwe. There you have it. That is the money market. We've seen how our local currency is performing against other major convertibles. We know for a fact that a lot of issues in our economy, Miriam, happen when you have a kwacha that is depreciating, pardon me, against other major convertibles. It affects a lot of things. I know for a fact that right now we've got an important topic that we'll be discussing later in the program, and that is the fact of the issue that has to do with the increase in fuel price. But one thing that you will learn in a statement that the Energy Regulation Board gave yesterday was the fact that the price of fuel could have even escalated worse, but it is because our kwacha has remained constant for some time. I don't know if you agree with that, but that was what the Energy Regulation Board said. They said that because our kwacha is at least a bit constant, the fuel price could have even been worse if that was not the case. So anyway, that's a topic of discussion later on in the program. But even right about now, we are going to take a short break, and we will be joined by a guest shortly. So stay tuned, we will be back. Thank you so much for staying tuned to Camnet TV. So yesterday, the Zambia Statistics Agency, also known as Zamstat, did give a bulletin of how the kwacha's inflation rate has been performing of late. We know for a fact that in 2020 or 2021, we saw our inflation reach record high of above 24%. This was the highest we had in over 2 decades. But since the United Party for National Development took over office in August of 2021, we've seen our country's inflation slowing down. So even about now, for you to understand what is it that I'm really talking about, we are going to play you a clip from what the Zambia Statistics Agency said yesterday.
Zambia had for the first time in over a decade posted economic contraction of negative 3.1% in the year 2020. The recession resulted in higher unemployment levels, lower wages and incomes, and lost opportunities. The former Patriotic Front administration made several trends to fix the economy. However, high inflation rates and depreciation of the local currency made the situation even worse. Information obtained from the Zambia Statistical Agency indicates that the country grew by 2.1% in the fourth quarter of 2021. Preliminary annual GDP at constant 2010 prices for the year 2021 shows that economic activities grew by 3.6% compared to a contraction of 3.1% in 2020.
You've got a negative growth rate. Ordinarily, your contribution to the growth will be negative.
Since the ascending of the UPND administration into office in August of 2021, the country's inflation rate has been slowing down. The annual inflation rate for the month of March 2022 has slowed down to 13.1%, the lowest in over 12 months. Mr. Mulenga attributes the drop in the inflation rate to a reduction in the annual food inflation rate from 16% in February to 15.3% this month.
Slow down if you've had very high inflation. I think we went to about 30 high inflation and start slowing down. That is a positive development in terms of the economy because you are moving towards price stability. And you may want to know that the government has put a target range of 6 to 8%.
Meanwhile, the labour market statistics has shown that the working age population increased by 1.3%. However, only 3.2 million from the total working age is employed.
Of the total labour force of 3.6, the total employed population during the year of 2021 was 3,164,748, simply estimated at 3.2 million.
Northwestern Province recorded the highest overall unemployment levels at 27.7%, seconded by Luapula Province.
In province, we've been talking about the fact that the economic activities are quite high there. We've got 3 big mining companies, but unemployment is high. One of the explanatory factors could be that the mining of today is capital intensive, and therefore it's not labor absorptive.
This shows, therefore, that there is need for the country to provide more employment opportunities if the country is to attain its vision of becoming a prosperous middle-income country by the year 2030. Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
There you have it. That was the Zamstat Interim Statistician General, Mr. Mulenga Msepa, who was just briefing us on how our economy has been performing over in the month of March 2021, yeah. And of course, reflecting back to 2020 and 2021. So there were some comparisons that were made in that presentation, of which some we are going to discuss on this program. And this morning, Miriam, we have been joined by financial analyst, economist. I don't know which one is the right title, but of course I know that is one expert in the area who's going to help us discuss this topic in detail. So we have been joined by Mr. Blessings Kafwanka. Sir, good morning.
Good morning, Prudence. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be part of your show today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, before we go much into our details, there might be our viewers there would want to know who Mr. Kafwanka is. Maybe just tell us a bit about yourself.
My name is Blessings Kafwanka. I'm a chartered accountant, financial and economic analyst.
Thank you for that introduction. Mr. Kafwanka, we did see the interim statistician general, Mr. Mulenga Msepa, yesterday mentioned that our country's inflation rate has slowed down to 13.1% from 14.2% recorded in February of 2022. And a lot of viewers who are listening to us this morning would wonder what inflation is. So I'm throwing this question to you. What is inflation?
Well, firstly, I think these are some very interesting developments that we are seeing, and an indication of the fact that things are getting better and better. And obviously we should expect that we should all be able to benefit from what is happening, provided that this continues in the long term. Inflation is basically a general increase in the prices of goods and services on the market, which is basically expressed as a percentage. So if you are told that inflation is growing at, inflation is at 13.1%, basically you are expecting that the prices are still going up, they are not coming down, contrary to what some people might think. You know, some people might think that because the rate of inflation has come down, then prices should also come down. No, but they are just basically telling you that there's been a decrease at the rate at which prices are going up on the market. You know, so it's just basically a general, increase or decrease in the rate at which the prices of goods and services are going up on the market.
That is a very interesting elaboration. So a lot of people get this wrong. They think when we have inflation that is slowing down, then the price of commodities, of course, should slow down. But people get surprised when they realize that despite having that being the case, the prices of commodity still remains high. But yesterday, again, Mr. Mulenga did mention to the fact that the food inflation is the reason why our inflation rate has gone slightly down, because food inflation, I think, moved from 16 point something, I think, to 15. So maybe what would be your comment with regards to the reduction in food inflation rate when the prices of commodities on the market are still high?
Well, the prices are still on the higher side and they're still going up, but the rate at which they are going up has been reducing over the last few months. And I think it is as expected, looking at the month in which we are. I mean, we are just coming out of the rainy season. I think the supply of essential food items on the market is far much better than we could ever have around this time. And I think perhaps one of the factors that has contributed to the decline in the rate of inflation over the last few months is the way the kwacha has been performing against other convertible currencies, and specifically the way the kwacha has performed against the dollar. The inflation that we saw going up in the last few years was mainly as a result of the depreciation of the kwacha. What some people might call imported inflation. The kwacha had depreciated so much that most of the items that we were bringing into the country, the importation of raw materials, the importation of equipment, the importation of clothing, and many other items that had gone up because the kwacha was obviously not performing well against other convertible currencies. And what we have seen in the recent past is that there's been some relative stability in the way the kwacha has been performing. Of course, we've seen some months where the kwacha has performed better, and we've also seen some months and weeks where the kwacha has lagged behind. But generally, we've seen some relative stability in the way the kwacha has been performing. So I think that has also helped to see a situation where the rate of inflation has continued dropping. And I think it's a very good thing that inflation is dropping. But I think we should also be mindful of what is happening at the moment. When you look at the global events that are unfolding, if you look at the war that is going on in Ukraine and the impact that it has had on the global economy, we have seen that the price of crude oil on the international market has risen very sharply, and a lot of countries out there have been affected. We've seen fuel prices going up in almost all countries across the globe, and the Energy Regulation Board yesterday did announce that the pump price of fuel would go up, and we should obviously expect that it will have an impact on the gains that have been made in relation to the fall in the rate of inflation. So the next 2 months or so, we should be able to feel the impact of the increase in the price of fuel on the rate of inflation and generally on the standard of living.
On the standard of living. Yeah, of course, I was even going to ask you that question with regards to how the increase in the pump price is going to affect our inflation rate, but I'm just glad that you have spoken to that fact. So we have seen what is happening on the global economy, and of course it's been triggered to almost every country. As a country, how is it that we can cushion the negative impact that this can really have, especially when it comes to the issue of the food price? We know that when there is high inflation, it equally affects the price of commodity on the market. So what is it that we can do as a country to ensure that this effect, I know we can't really contain the effect, but at least there's something that we can do in order to ensure that it does not escalate?
Well, that's a very important question that you've asked, Prudence. I think there is need for us to focus more on solutions than focusing on problems. Of course, we know that there is a problem, fuel prices on the global market, but I think we need to focus on solutions. And in approaching this, we need to look at the things that are within our control, things that we can do something about. We may not be able to do anything about the war in Ukraine. We may not be able to do anything about the global price of fuel, but there are certain things that we have under our control, and some of those things relate to productivity. There are certain sectors of our economy which we can have direct control. Manufacturing is one very good example. We need to ensure that we improve on manufacturing. We should be able to produce as much as we can. So one thing that we can do is to ensure that we create a very good environment, a very good business environment that will ensure that sectors such as the manufacturing sector are able to thrive. We should create an environment where sectors such as the wholesale sector, the retail sector, the tourism sector, and the agricultural sector are able to thrive. Those are the things that we have within our control. So we might complain about the war in Ukraine, but the most important thing is we should look at solutions. How best do we ensure that we grow our economy domestically? We need to ensure that we empower, Zambians. I'm happy with what is going on in relation to the CDF. I think the government is really making good efforts in terms of empowering local entrepreneurs. Those are the kind of programs and the kind of initiatives that we should be thinking about, because those are the things that are within our circle of influence.
Okay. I love the fact that you mentioned about the manufacturing sector. Are we doing enough as a country to ensure that we boost this sector?
Certainly not. I think we can do better. Because, I mean, the sector hasn't been doing very well. If you look at the statistics will clearly show you that there's been a decline in the contribution that the manufacturing sector has been making towards our GDP. That's a clear-cut indication to show you that we are not doing very well. And that is the reason why we have continued depending on importing things from across our borders. So we need to do a little bit more. We need to ensure that the manufacturing sector begins to contribute a little bit more to our GDP.
This brings me to this question. In the fourth quarter of 2021, we saw our country's gross domestic product grow by 2.1% in the fourth quarter of 2021. But what is interesting, rather, or what is saddening, what is interesting is the major sectors that contributed to the growth in the fourth quarter was information and communication, construction, public administration, transport and storage, and manufacturing. Manufacturing contributed 0.3% to the 2.1%, of course, which is not a good thing. But negative contribution sector came from the agriculture, forestry and fishing, mining and quarrying, and financial and insurance. So this is a question this is a country that relies on agriculture, on mining. We know that we are also doing forestry and fishing. We've seen a lot of fishing being promoted of late. But even mining and quarrying, we know this sector is like booming in Zambia, but it's not contributing to the country's GDP. What is it that we are doing wrong as a country? Why is it that our agriculture sector, forestry and fishing, mining and quarrying, financial insurance industries are not contributing to the GDP?
First, I should say it's disappointing that our agricultural sector is not performing as expected. If you look back in history, just slightly over 10 years ago, the agricultural sector was making a significant contribution towards our GDP, more than 10%. But now things have changed. That's a clear-cut indication to show that we haven't really invested enough in the agricultural sector and agro-processing sector as well over the years. We need to pay more attention to this particular sector. It has been declining over the years, and I am very hopeful that the new government that we have in place now will be able to pay particular attention to the agricultural sector because of the immense benefits that will obviously come in terms of employment creation and also feeding into other sectors such as agro-processing and manufacturing as well. And
the mining and quarrying is equally contributing negative to the
GDP.
One thing that we should also bear in mind is that we are just coming from a time when COVID-19 had ravaged the global economy, and we saw that the global economy was affected. Everyone was affected, including supply chain disruptions, and because of that, I think we didn't really perform well across all sectors of the economy, and that the mining sector is included. And I'm happy that the Zambia Statistic Agency has informed us that there's been an improvement in terms of our economic performance in relation to the way we performed in 2019. That is 2021 versus 2020. There's been
2020, 2021.
Yes.
In 2020, we saw our economy contracting 3.1%. But what they told us yesterday is that our economic activities grew by 3.6% in the year 2021.
2021, precisely. And I think that that's a very good development. That's a sign to show that we are now getting out of that COVID era that was really having a huge negative impact on our economy. But I think we should be able to focus on those areas where we haven't performed as expected. You mentioned the mining sector that has made a negative contribution towards our GDP. I think we need to make more efforts in that particular sector. I think we've seen the government come up with certain initiatives and certain policy changes to try and attract more investment into the mining sector. I think recently we saw that they made revisions to the mining tax policy, and they are trying as much as possible to attract more investment in that sector. I think that is good, but I think we can do even much better.
I hear you. Then also yesterday there was something that really came out from the announcement that the Central Statistics made. This is with regards to the labor market in Zambia. From the information that we were given, we know that Northwestern Province has the lowest unemployment levels in the country. But this province has about three
mining companies, but it is recording the lowest. And of course, it was followed by Luapula. We also know that in Luapula there are some activities, of course, that are happening because that area is good when it comes to the rains and stuff like that. Agriculture should be booming in those areas, but what we saw was a situation where these areas are recording low employment levels. What would be your comment? Honestly speaking, a province with three big mines recording the lowest unemployment levels in the country. What is it that
that's a very serious issue that you've raised. I know expectations are very high amongst Zambians, and particularly people that are in these provinces where these mines are coming up. Expectations are very high. They expect that the rate of unemployment should go down. They expect jobs. But I think one thing that we should appreciate and understand is the fact that the mining companies in those areas cannot possibly absorb the entire labor population there. They can only employ up to a certain level. Otherwise, if you decide to employ the entire labor population there, you make the whole business inefficient. The mining firm will not be able to perform. So they can only employ as much. The reason why those provinces, in addition to Luapula and other areas, are recording very high levels of unemployment is because certain key sectors of the economy in those areas have not fully developed. Lusaka, for example, does not have any major mines, but the rate of unemployment is relatively lower than Luapula, Northwestern, and other provinces. Why? It is because other sectors such as the wholesale sector, the manufacturing sector, and the real sector, the retail sector and also the financial sector are performing much better. So for you to be able to create employment, for you to be able to create jobs, you can't possibly rely on one sector, the mining sector. So provinces such as Northwestern, we need to see other sectors of the economy begin to come up so that we have more jobs. We need to see the manufacturing sector, the agro-processing sector that is going to depend on the agricultural products that are coming from there, opening up. We need to see the wholesale sector, the retail sector coming up. That is when we'll be able to see a sustainable increase in the rate at which jobs are being created. But yes, the mining sector is also a key sector that should create jobs, but the mining sector alone cannot possibly employ everyone in Northwestern Province.
Can we say, are we lacking in some parts the political will?
Well, I think there are a number of factors at play, and political will is also one of those things that also has an effect. And I think it's important that politicians should also be able to up their game so that we are able to expand our economy just beyond the dependence on the mining sector. The mining sector will not create jobs for everyone. So we need to have the political will to develop other key sectors of our economy.
Okay, that is interesting. Mr. Kafanka, a powerful discussion we are having this morning with regards to the economic performance, and of course a lot of issues yesterday that were raised by the Zambia Statistic Agency, and of course Mr. Molenga Msepa was updating the country on a performance of the economy. We know for a fact that Zambia's economy in the fourth quarter of 2021 grew by 2.1%, and of course the growth of the whole year, the country grew by 3.6% compared to a contraction of a negative 3.1% that was recorded in the year 2020. And I know Mr. Kafanka has mentioned the fact that that was necessitated by the fact that we had COVID-19, but the fact that COVID-19 is now done, we are likely to see things do better in our economy. But of course we have some setbacks when it comes to the issue of fuel, which affects almost the performance of everything in our economy. Maybe I'm going to pose this question to you, Mr. Kafanka. Do you think our revising of fuel price every month at this particular time is really necessary?
Well, firstly, I think it is important that we should have a fuel price that reflects the costs. We should have a cost-reflective fuel price that takes into account what is happening on the global market. We've seen that every time there's an increase or there's a decrease in the price of fuel. In the past, the way things were, I mean, we didn't really have a price that reflected the changes that were taking place. So it is very important that we should have a price that reflects the changes in the cost structure, the changes that are going on the global market in terms of the fuel prices. But coming back to your question, in my opinion, I think the monthly revisions are not really a very good idea. I think what we need to do is to revise the whole thing. I think we need to revert to what we were doing previously, where we were revising prices quarterly. I think that is very good for the business environment, because what is going on right now, it creates a lot of instability, and a lot of businesses are negatively affected, especially when it comes to pricing. Just a few weeks ago, these were your prices, and now you have to revise your prices. And we've also seen that prices in nature are very sticky. Prices don't easily respond when there is a decrease in fuel prices. Okay, we saw it. I mean, the time when there was an increase in fuel prices about 2 months ago, we saw that the prices of many essential goods and services on the market went up. But then when there was a marginal decrease, we didn't really see any reduction. That is the nature of prices. They are usually very sticky. They will not easily come down. So what is likely to continue happening if we maintain the idea of revising fuel prices on a monthly basis? We are likely to see prices continue going up and not coming down when there is a decrease in fuel prices. So I think what we need to be doing now, or rather what we need to do, is to reconsider the decision that we made to be revising on a monthly basis and begin to do it on a quarterly basis. I think it's a lot better that way.
Do we have the capacity as a country to stock fuel so that we are not having these problems when there is maybe a fight on the international market, or even other causes rather than this?
Especially when it comes to the changing of price. I believe that if we have fuel in stock, the revising of the price won't be just there and then. Do you think we have the capacity anyway?
Clearly, from what we have seen obtaining, we don't really have enough capacity. And I think we need to work towards that. If you look at what is going on in the US, the president has just announced that the government there will release some reserves, some fuel from the reserves, and it is expected that those reserves will be able to sustain the prices and sustain supply on the market for the next 6 months, which is a very good thing. But for us, I mean, just 1 month, the war in Ukraine started mid-February. It's just barely a month, and already we are able to feel the impact of what is going on there. So if we can reach a point where we can have enough reserves, and we are in a position where the US is, where we are able to release some of the reserves on the market and be able to sustain the price for a considerable period of time, 3 months, 4 months, even up to 6 months, I think that would be good. So clearly, with what is obtaining, I think we don't have sufficient capacity to be able to stock enough fuel reserves.
Your comment when it comes to the removal of fuel subsidies, was it a good move by the government?
I think it is okay. I mean, if the government is going to subsidize fuel, where do you expect the money to come from? It is from you and I who are paying taxes. So we are the same people that are paying for those subsidies. You know, I think the decision they made to remove the subsidy will have so many benefits. What we saw in the past was a situation where the government was spending a lot of money subsidizing fuel, and you had other sectors of the economy that were being affected because of those subsidies. You know, now we have this money that can be channeled to other areas. We have this money that can be channeled towards, social protection. We have this money that can be channeled towards the education sector. You know, money that can be channeled towards ensuring that we have free education. The health sector needs some of these resources. So we possibly can't manage, because now we are at a time when we do not have sufficient resources to finance our budget 100%. We have to rely on borrowing. You know, a huge chunk of our resources, a huge chunk of the financing that we need to finance the budget comes from borrowing. You know, so I think for me it is okay to remove the subsidies on fuel, and let's see how things will unfold as time goes on.
All right.
People out there, prudence will be saying, no.
I know how it feels.
Yes.
And when you look back into history, I think we've been having these discussions for quite some time now. The MMD government was in a similar position where they had to remove these subsidies, and at some point, quietly, the subsidies came back. PF government, it's the same thing. I remember in the year 2013, we had the same discussion where they were saying we need to remove subsidies, you know, and they gave us very good arguments why we needed to remove fuel subsidies, why we needed to remove subsidies on electricity, and we saw the price of electricity units going up because of the removal of subsidies. They did give us very good explanations why we needed to do that. But over time, we saw the subsidies coming back, and we are back at that point where we are talking about removing subsidies. We don't know exactly what is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years.
Maybe the subsidies let's use an example of what happened in the past. We saw a situation where subsidies were removed, and they gave us the reasons for doing that.
Yes.
Did we really see the reasons they gave us being felt in the economy before we had those subsidies come back? Because, you know, we can learn from history.
Yeah.
They say you can always learn from what happens in the past.
Yes. You know, I think there is a right way of doing things. And when you look at the issue of subsidies, I think all of us know exactly what is supposed to be done. If you look at what is happening on the political landscape, both the opposition and the ruling party, they know what is supposed to be done. That's the reason why 5-10 years ago we had the government at the time giving us good explanations why we needed to remove the subsidies. You know, now the problem is the political cycles. We have noticed that you notice that every time we are going towards elections, you know, these subsidies will keep coming back, and they come back very quietly. They will not even announce to you that we are bringing back these subsidies. So the political cycles somehow have an influence over some of these decisions, and I hope that with the coming in of the UPND government, they'll be able to hold on to some of the changes they have made now, and not be easily influenced by what is happening on the political landscape.
Okay, Mr. Kafanka, well explained there. I know a lot of people are watching have got a lot of questions that they would want to ask with regards to the topic that we are discussing this morning. So we are going to give an opportunity for those who would like to call and make your contribution to please come through. The numbers that are on the screen, just call and make your contribution if you've got questions or something that you have to contribute with regards to today's topic. You can call and we are going to get to listen to what you have to say. And of course, remember that stakeholders are equally watching. The people that make these decisions are equally watching, and they would like to hear from you with regards to this. Mr. Rafaka, maybe let me take you a little bit back to when we talked about the inflation rate. We have mentioned the fact that the current happenings in our economy are going to have an impact on our country's inflation, like what we've done this past months, the efforts that we've been making and stuff like that are going to be affected. But when we look at maybe provincial contribution to the country's GDP, Lusaka and Copperbelt contributed the highest.
Yeah.
But again, we saw provinces such as Northwestern Province and Western Province recording the lowest contribution to the country's inflation rate, like provincial inflation rate performance. Maybe comment to that as well.
Well, that's very important information, which I think the government needs to look at and address. It basically clearly shows you that in terms of the economic activities in Western Province and in Northwestern Province, the economic activities are not as they should be, you know, and we need to revive the economy in those particular areas. So even as we are making these efforts to you know, empower entrepreneurs through CDF, I think we need to pay particular focus to some of those provinces. Some of these provinces, they do have the capacity, you know, they do have the resources, the raw materials, they have land, huge chunks of arable land, you know, they have the potential. But the problem is that we haven't really invested enough. We haven't really been able to pay attention to some of these areas. You know, so that is very important information, which I think the government should be able to act on and be able to revamp economic activities or revive or even come up with more ways to revive the economy in those provinces.
Interesting explanation there, but maybe just a question: why do you think Lusaka contributes the highest to the country's GDP?
Prudence, you have to hold your thought. We have a caller. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. You're through to Camnet TV. May you kindly
thank you very much. Thank you. That's a very interesting discussion you have there.
Please tell us your name, sir, and where you're calling us from.
Yeah, I'm calling you from Sparta.
Okay.
How is Chipata this morning?
The name is not quite clear. I hope you can get me.
Yes, we can get you.
Right. Let me just go ahead and make my contribution.
Please go ahead.
Now, the first thing is, why are we setting as a country to have fuel stocks? Because we are referring to the war in Ukraine. This war has just been there for the past 3-4 weeks. If we had some fuel in stock, that would have given us some kind of a lifeline to see what we can do in the not so distant future. Why are we failing to have fuel stocks? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Maybe a response to that.
Well, I think that answer, I mean, that question should be directed to the rightful authorities. For me, I think I'm also I'm also concerned about that. It's a very important question that I asked, you know, over the years. That, I think that is something that we should have been able to sort out over the years. And we should have been able to think strategically. You know, we don't have to wait until we are in a situation where there is war in Ukraine. And by the way, we don't know how long this situation is likely to last. It might be around maybe for the next 3 to 4 years. You know, what are we going to do in that case? Are we going to see a total collapse in our economy? You know, so I think these are some of the things that we need to focus on. These are some of the things that we should have done in the past. And I hope that, you know, the government, the New Deal government, now will be able to focus on some of those areas. We need to be able to grow our capacity to have enough fuel reserves.
Blessings Kafwanga there is the financial and economic analyst, and this morning we were discussing the issue with regards to the country's inflation rate, which has slowed down to 13.1% in March of 2022. And of course, we saw the Central Statistic mention to a fact that our economy grew in the year 2021 by 3.6%. And of course, the fourth quarter of 2021 also saw our economy grow rather by 2.1%. So there were some sectors that contributed to the growth, which we've discussed on the program. And of course, we saw the agriculture sector, the mining sector, the quarrying sector, and the financial sector contributing negatives to the country's growth,
GDP.
domestic product. And of course, this should be something of concern because we can't be this giant country with agriculture sector, but it's contributing negatives.
We have a caller. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Please tell us where you're calling us from, sir.
Yes, I'm calling you from Mondola.
From Dola. Good to know that Dola is watching. Please tell us your name and your contribution.
Yes, I just want to introduce you over the national authority regarding the subsidy. You know, we spoke about this, especially for us in supporting the opposition. But they call us here, the government that you have been today. They're not quite some of the making some of the decisions. Because if you look at USA has been surviving those subsidies. Instead of should everything move up, USA is frequently to usher in whatever they are putting their reserve. You have a country, support one a country without a reserve. This is why the FRA is supposed to reserve attitude. When it comes to my victims, what is happening in this way? Because you cannot rely on the opponent without having your own reserve. I think that's where the way is putting out to create policy. These are the most questions that we should always be talking about.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Maybe, Mr. Kafanka, just your concluding remarks. I know that we've gone about the time that we agreed. We'll have to let you go. But for everyone watching us, we are going to have an energy expert in studio who's going to also add his voice to the current happenings in the economy with regards to the fuel pump price increment. But Mr. Kafanka, maybe just your concluding remarks with regards to the current happenings in the economy, and of course, how is it that we can maintain our economic performance?
Well, in conclusion, I think this is a very sensitive issue that we are discussing, and the increase in fuel prices is something that is painful to all of us. It is something that is going to hurt all of us. We must not pretend. Nobody should pretend because they belong to this camp or that camp as if things are okay. Things are really bad. But I think it's also very important for us to be able to understand the fundamentals or the factors, the global events that have led to this particular problem that we are experiencing. This is something that I think many other countries are going through. That is reality. And I think the most important thing is we shouldn't just focus on the problem, but we should begin to look at alternatives. We should begin to look at solutions. And I'm glad that some of the callers are raising very important questions to do with reserves, our capacity to be able to have enough fuel in reserves. Those are some of the things that we should be thinking about. And we should also be looking at other ways of strengthening our economy. So there's very little, or there's actually nothing that we can do about the global events that have led to this particular problem. But there is a lot that we can do to be able to address the problems that are going to arise in the long run.
Okay, there you have it. That was Mr. Blessings Kafanka, who's a financial and economic analyst. And of course, we looked at a number of issues this morning that are important to our economy. So even right about now, we are going to take a short break, and we will be joined by an energy expert, even as we get to discuss the topic further. So stay tuned to Camnet TV. We will be back shortly.
Camnet TV is becoming big and better. You can now watch Camnet TV wherever you are around the world, simply by downloading the Camnet TV app. With Camnet TV app, you only use less bundles. Camnet TV, not just another channel.
Hello, I'm Deborah Lukalu, all the way from South Africa. You are watching Camnet channel, not just another channel. God bless you. Stay tuned.
We celebrate for all you've done, Lord. We give you all the praise. Oh, we testify. We celebrate for all you've done, Lord. We give you all the praise.
Thank you for still staying tuned to Camnet TV. Earlier, before we went on a break, we were joined in the studio by Mr. Blessings Kafwanka, the financial economist, who were discussing about inflation. And then before we went on a break, we said we were going to be joined by the energy expert, Mr. Johnston Chikwanda, who has joined me in the studio, and we are discussing our topic of regard this morning, which is about the major issue, fuel increase in the country. First of all, before we go to our topic of discussion this morning, please tell us about yourself. Maybe people out there would want to know, who is Mr. Chikwanda?
I'm Johnston Chikwanda. I'm an engineer by profession, a fellow of the Engineering Institute of Zambia. And all my life I've spent it, my work life, I've spent it in the energy sector, both in Zambia and also in South Africa. I've done consultants work also in West Africa and in several parts of the world. Yeah, so I contribute to shaping of policy and lobby for best practice in the industry. And I have sat on the board of directors of the Energy Regulation Board in 2012. I also served in the board of Indeni Petroleum Refinery, and later on became the board chairman of Indeni Petroleum Refinery. And after finishing my tour of duty, I also served on the Rural Electrification Authority board as a board chairman for that, and served on many other sector reform task force and different, contributions to national development in the world as large. I'm the chairperson of the Energy Forum of Zambia.
So much things.
I'm sure the right person to discuss
exactly
the industry in Zambia. So if you have those pending questions that would want to ask with regards to what is happening in our economy with regards to the increase of fuel price, someone who sat on the board of the Energy Regulation Board is seated with us here to discuss this topic. And of course, he was even part of the board of Indeni.
Indeni, yeah. Something that we are looking forward to have as we get to discuss this morning. Yeah, but coming to our topic of discussion this morning, the fuel, the hike in the fuel pump. Let's talk about that.
Well, there are two factors that determine the price at the pump: the exchange rate and the price on the international market. Those are the two major variables that affect the character of the price at the pump. The exchange rate, depending on the direction it is going, it is sufficient to bring the price down, or it can bring the price, take the price up. The price on the international market also responds and is influenced by different factors. For instance, if you have got challenges with production. There isn't enough stock which is going into the global market. There is a gap between the demand and the supply imbalance. Then you are going to have the price going up, because this is the law of supply and demand. So you will see the price starting to go up. If you have got challenges with the corridors, the transit areas where the fuel is supposed to be passing, like that time we're having a lot of hijacking of the big ships in the Indian Ocean, then you can also have the risk goes up and the price also goes up. If you have got the conflict, like war in major challenges, in major oil producing countries, then that creates fear in the market. The speculators begin to cash in, and other producers begin to be constrained to produce. So in this particular case, we're dealing with two issues. We know that Iran at the moment is still under sanctions. So the world doesn't go to Iranian fuel. We don't have that. So we're counting on other people, other countries to meet the shortfall which is arising by not having Iranian oil on the market. Then this war also comes up. And its impact is very real because of the sanctions that are there. And even though there is a limited number of countries in Europe that are still buying energy from Russia, the bulk of them, the majority are scared of big powers. If they catch you trading with Russia, you are in very big trouble. You can have your entire company ruined and frozen. So at the moment, there is that apprehension to trade with Russia. So the inventory coming from Russia is not really part of the global oil reserves. So it has now created the further pressure on the already depleted stock that we had. So the demand has been spiking up. Countries are stocking up because they don't know how this is going to pan out, how long it is going to take. So that is what has happened, and we've seen the prices shooting through the roof.
Earlier we were having a discussion, and you mentioned the fact that we still have fuel subsidies on the fuel sector. Had it not been so, the situation would have been worse. So maybe just to bring it to the viewer who are listening, Mr. Chikwanda, can you just explain the hike in the fuel price that we have in the country? Was it the right thing for the government to do to remove subsidies from the fuel sector?
First and foremost, poorly targeted subsidies are very harmful. I've been very clear and consistent about this. But the previous regime, I think around 2013 or so, they removed the subsidies. They said we're not going to have anything to do with subsidies. But then we saw in the last 2 years, the country started sliding back in the subsidies. And in the past 12 months, 2020, they are coming to 2021, there was complete no adjustment. For 2 years, there was no price increase. From 2019 in December, there was no price increase. Even when the fundamentals dictated that the prices must go up, government would not increase the price. So the public was cushioned for about 2 years. You see, if we had also handled that time properly, maybe we wouldn't be in this particular situation. But 2 years, you clamp the price, no price increase for 2 years. Then one day, a reality check is going to come. And this is where we are. So in 2020 now, coming to 2021, what did we see? When there was almost nothing now that you can remove to reduce it, to manage, government went in there now, suspended customs duty, 25% suspended, because the price then wanted to shoot up by 25%. As though that was not enough, pressure built again to increase. Government went in again in the price template, suspended VAT, 16%. If you add 16% plus 25%, this is already 41% tax. Then, as if it was not enough, the pressure went up again to increase the price. Then again, government went in there and suspended excise duty. So as things stand, if you compute that excise duty, 16% VAT, 25% customs duty, you are talking of total taxes suspended almost in the range of about 45%. They are not in that price. So these taxes were supposed to come back at the beginning of January, in January this year. They were supposed to be integrated back. But the prices, pump prices were going to shift by more than 41% just by integrating them back. And the new government decided to extend that relief to the general public by extending those waivers to end of June. So they are not there. If those taxes were there, today we should be talking of around 35 kwacha per litre if those taxes were there. So what I'm trying to say is that there is still subsidy in place, indirectly by these taxes that have been waived by government. And then also there is another subsidy, which is a cross-subsidization, which makes us have uniform palm prices throughout the country. Because a long time ago, the further you go away from the line of rail, the more expensive the price used to be. But then we started the cross-subsidizing, where people that are near the line of rail are paying for people in the far-flung areas to ensure a uniform price in the market. So this is a state. There is very little capacity that the government can do, and it is very, very tough. It is very tough because we don't have those strategic reserves, and if it has to come to a subsidy, again, it has to depend on the capacity. If the Treasury has got capacity to cover across all the products, or maybe subsidize one product, like maybe just go for petrol, subsidize there, and maybe to the full extent, or maybe only partially, maybe 20% or what. But again, that depends on, is there a capacity in the Treasury to handle
I love the fact that you brought out as a country not having reserves. Don't you think this is high time that we should look forward to that?
And also maybe adding to that question, do we have the capacity? I know you sat on the board of Indeni, and apparently as it stands, Indeni is no longer performing the function that it was supposed to perform. Do we have as a capacity as a country to stock fuel for a particular period?
You know, the challenge which we've been facing is because we have had the government also seriously participating in the entire business setup. So as part of the reforms, government has been trying to disengage from participating in importing refined products, so that they leave it to the private sector. So what ordinarily is supposed to happen is we need to come up with a policy, a standalone policy on strategic petroleum reserves. The policy talks to how are we going to stockpile, where are we going to stockpile, how are we going to fund this stockpile, for how long can it last? Should it be lasting for 6 months? Should it be lasting for 3 months? 3 months is a better benchmark globally. If you can stockpile for about 3 months, then you are home and dry. And then when do you discharge fuel from the strategic reserve? When? So those are policy issues, and we don't have a strategic petroleum reserve policy in the country at the moment. So the starting point must be the finalization of the strategic petroleum policy. Yes, we have the national energy policy, which is very good, and it amplifies on how we are supposed to be enhancing fuel security in the country. We have seen depots being built in almost all provincial centers, but it is a stockpiling now in those depots that requires now a policy instrument. Where is the money going to come from? Are you going to do it as government alone, or are you going to use it together with the private sector, or are you going? So it's a policy issue. That is why we have had, and we don't have any fuel stock to talk about, because the oil industry that is bringing for itself, usually those they don't like keeping fuel stocks in there. They will keep minimal, maybe just 7 days or something like that. So now insulating the country, promoting security, now that's a government issue. That's a government issue. In almost all the countries where you see fuel strategic reserves being built in the country, it means it's government that did that. You cannot ask a private sector, oh, can you stockpile for 3 months or for 2 months? They won't do that. It's like Food Reserve Agency. So the equivalent of FRA is the equivalent of this is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That's a government mandate, and we need a policy to answer to that.
We've talked about the policy, but the question still stands. Do we have the capacity? Apparently, can we use Indeni to stock fuel for even about 2 to 3 months?
It's again, the reason I'm going back to the policy issue, because the policy issue is what informs where the money is going to come from. It's an issue of funding, because when you look in the pricing template, the one from ERB, there is a cost line there which is called the Strategic Fuel Reserve Fund. Strategic Reserve Fund. That fund which is there in that line is what is supposed to be funding strategic reserves. But at one time, they went in and also almost wiped it out almost in an attempt to try and reduce. So anywhere again where you see this kind of stock, it means in the pricing mechanism there is one cost line which goes to funding strategic reserve. So this money is harvested at the end of the month. It goes to a separate account which imports fuel to stockpile. So the capacity is there, because who is going to fund this? It is again the Zambian people through the government. So in other ways, during these price escalations, I would rather one day we hear that, oh, now the price has gone up by so much, but we have also increased maybe the strategic fuel reserve by a further 1 kwacha or by 15 way. We are going to make so much money, and this money that we'll be making is going to be stockpiled, to create stockpiles for the country. Yeah, that is how I would recommend. I hope I've answered the question. So the capacity is there. The capacity is there.
To stock is there, or the equipment for stocking
is there.
Is there.
Yes.
But what is lacking?
Strategic policies.
Is the policy. Okay.
Yeah, and enforcement also, so, and implementation. Because when you say there is already a line in the cost structure there for strategic petroleum reserves, but why is it not going to stockpiles? It needs to be interrogated.
This also brings me back to the question. My question: do you think we should revert back as a country to the old system of reviewing the fuel prices after 3 months, or the monthly thing is okay? Because different experts have observed that this is costly to the business community for doing every after a month.
You know, this price reserve, let me give us over the history. When Indian was working, we were importing crude oil in the country, it would take about 45 days for a shipload to arrive in Dar es Salaam and also pump to Indian. So that's why we're using the 60 days, the 2 months, because it was lining well with a shipload arriving and something like that. But Indian is not in the picture anymore. So the oil companies now, they're just buying on the spot market. Go to Beira, go to Dar es Salaam, go to South Africa. You buy at the price as it is sitting now. That is where the problem is. Because in that time, when a shipload has arrived and it has given you the fuel, it will take you a long period of time before we could deplete that shipload. And then you order another one. The time it's also arriving. So we could afford with about 60 days. But we don't have now that. Indian has been closed. So we are exposed now to buying refined fuel on the spot market. So, and you cannot stick now to the 60 days, because from the time they procure up to the time, the fuel prices may have moved, which can disadvantage either the consumer or the supplier themselves. So there has been there was industry cry actually to reduce the price review, because we also had the exchange rate at that time, it was not stable. It was also causing a lot of upheavals. The 30-day price review happens not just in Zambia, South Africa, and the almost entire region. They are on 30 days. But that system works well in a normal market environment. The challenge that we are facing now is that we are in a war zone globally. So we are in this war zone where the assumptions that support the 30-day pricing review are challenged significantly. Because when you are on a 30-day, one of the assumptions is that it is not every month that the price is going to shoot up. You could have spells of a month or 2 months. The price has been stable because the kwacha against the dollar is fairly stable. The price on the international market are also fairly stable. So you would go for spells of maybe a month or 2. Also, the price has no change. Then sometimes you can also go down, the price goes down, then sometimes the price goes up. That is how, in a perfect market environment, that works. But we are in a state of war now, where we don't know how long it's going to take. The pricing have gone out of the ceiling. The fundamentals are going out of the rails. So it's very, very challenging. That's why it is raising some apprehensions, because as it is, truth be told, the picture that is emerging is that we are likely to continue to see price increases unless and until there is a de-escalation in the tension in the war that is happening.
Wow.
Maybe for everyone who's watching, they might be having a thought that I'm having right now, Mr. Chikwanda. When we say pump price of fuel, when we see the announcement always by the Energy Regulation Board over the increase in the pump price, this was even been observed in the past, you'll find that immediately 24 hours, the price of fuel will increase. But we all even know for a matter of fact that that stock, which maybe filling stations are selling by then, is old stock. But immediately they announce, Mr. Chikwanda, 24 hours fuel pump price has gone up. Don't you think there should maybe be a period which government should be giving for that old stock to finish? For example, if they announce the pump price today, they give 3 days to 4 days for that
they allow
stock to
for the
finish.
old stock to finish, then the new price can be put into effect.
Why is it that it is constant when it is increased? They announce 24 hours, the price.
And you know, you'll find a lot of people now
queuing up to ensure that maybe they
exactly full tank here. So
I think that is a very good observation, and I have also tried to engage with the authorities at the Energy Regulation Board to try and rethink this policy, because it's a policy that they have had as an institution of announcing with the effect from midnight. Now, so we need to look at the genesis. Where did this come from? And is it still relevant in modern times? Because a long time ago, you know, we had very few filling stations. And so when there was so much fear that if we inform the public that the fuel prices are going to go up next week or so, there will be so much chaos, panic buying, and it will ruin everything. People keeping drums of petrol in their houses, in their garages, so on and so forth. But and we've been like that, you know, announcing like that over the past 20 years or so. But the situation now has improved, has changed. The market conditions have improved. We have now so many filling stations around, and we have monitoring systems. The safety standards are in place now. Most filling stations have got the CCTVs, and they know that if you sell to people in certain containers, it is illegal. A license can be provoked. So there has been this rethink and engagement that perhaps as a reform, as part of the ongoing reforms, can we move away from increasing this with immediate effect from midnight?
Let me just hold your thoughts. We have a caller. Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
We're fine, thank you. How are you?
This is Reverend Mamsei calling from the
Yes, please.
Rev, please go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, I'm not going to
I'm quite much okay.
Yeah. But what I said, not just belonging as one of these vessels to the interaction with you, because I'm simply an imitator. But first of all, I think that for me, patriotism goes beyond just literature. Patriotism means that, you know, we put the welfare of the country and our people.
Pastor, Reverend, your line is a little bit bad.
I can't hear.
Really?
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Maybe you can speak a bit louder. Maybe.
Okay, I'm still speaking louder right now.
Okay. Yes, we can get you now.
Okay, I'm saying that patriotism goes beyond our rhetoric. It is about, you know, looking at the welfare of the nation first, and leadership, you know, is well placed in that regard. I mean, in case I'm talking about leadership, there are the government, because the government is elected to provide the service for the public, for the people. And the issue here in Ukraine, which seems to be, you know, taking the lead, in any form, we disagree with it. Because first of all, the issue here in Ukraine just came in, you know, yesterday, and I'm just using that to you know, because it has only been the world in around like for a month now. When I think we are going to that, you know, the issue of fuel price is planned ahead of time. I don't know whether I'm correct, so you as an expert to be able to guide me. You have a plan. Like Barbara was saying that, you know, even when the adjustment is being made, there's already stock that, you know, is available with the service station. But immediately, you know, for example, they always are victim of that. You could see that they were deliberately working onto the stocks that they had waiting for the price adjustment. Now, these are the things that purchases and leadership of government should be able to factor in. Because you see, it's like robbing from your own people. That's like the issue of Ukraine. For me, it is like, you know, a cover-up. Because it is not the major, in my view, not a major factor to the increment of fuel. Okay? Then there's an aspect of planning it that way, where these fuel purchasing are like done in a month away, not so support like for 3 to 4 months. So it means that the price may level as of today. If, for example, let's just say for argument's sake, the buying is done, for example, last month, the purchases, this planning will be like for 3-4 months ahead. So even if the issues of external shocks like the war that starts being, you know, used as a cover, you know, comes into play, I think it cannot distort the prices immediately to warrant that adjustment. The other issue is that let us start interrogating, and me I'm calling or advocating for interrogation of cost factors. Let us take note of that. Cost factor. For example, from the point of buying to the landing cost, let us interrogate the cost factors that are involved that should be able to justify and warrant the increment of oversupply. And in totality, now the 26th or 27th quarter that will be paid for a liter. What are the cost factors? Break them down, you know, component by component, to warrant this. Because sometimes when we just have these broad figures and they are being justified because of Ukraine, because of external international shocks and the international oil market prices, and we are not breaking it down in terms of figures of how this cost structure is structured to arrive at this particular figure. It doesn't make sense, and to me, it is not there as broker. Let us be honest. That's why I started with patriotism and leadership. Because the patriotism and leadership, you'll be open. There'll be nothing that will be needed. You lay figures that they are on the table to justify why the figures are at this time now. The other issue is that we have something that is in public domain that has done yesterday, how we spoke to the nation and brought in the issue of subsidies. Because that is what also leadership does. When the cost of things are beyond, you know, the sustenance, because there are sources in the country and those in the single city, if you look at the affect factors, they haven't changed. So, but if you keep on increasing, and these are drivers, energy is a driver of the economy, you increase in that factor. Everything, there is a ripple reaction of you know, everything in terms of cost. That we are, you know, it's just like inflation. Last time when, you know, we had to stop on the inflation to other elections and the quarter went to, you know, AY. Everybody was saying dollar. No, sir. I said, I don't know how to make I'm put that more than home, sir. What I was the dollar. So now it's Ukraine. So let us now start interrogating the terrorists again. So now how are you going to help them on time? So this is where government now should be able to show that I start because there are certain components more important, actually, and make sense. So to try and push up, you can forgo those and then you subsidize the people. So that you know,
thank you so much, Rev. We have to cut you short. Thank you. Even buying veggies.
Yeah, the Reverend there has spoken to factors of subsidies. He suggested that patriotism is about leadership looking at the welfare of people, and also is spoken on the issue of interrogating the cost factors. So maybe, Mr. Chikwande, you can respond to some of the issues he's raised.
Yeah, I think one of the things he raised, we have already talked about it, which is about this thing of announcing with effect from midnight. So that one, I think the ERB is listening. Personally, my argument has been, there is now, looking at the way the market has evolved, the stations that are so many, so the fear that we had that if people know that next week the price is going to go up, there will be panic buying all over and things like that. We need to test whether that can stand. Because in other jurisdictions, even in South Africa, they know ahead of time that next month the price is going to go up by such and such a margin. So we need to start also benchmarking further with the best practice in terms of what is happening. So that if that can be done, that will be a good thing. But then we also need to plan for what happens when the price goes down. The price will be reduced further by next week or something like that. So there is need to start, I think, some conversation here. On the issue of the war, he talked about the issue of the war. He said it has only come within the...
that's being used as an example.
No. The tension started in the last quarter of last year. That's when there was so much tension, exchange of words, build up, shifting the army to the borders, and so on and so forth. By that time, the market had already started reacting, because the commodities market, oil industry is very, very sensitive. Anything that we just hear, even just a bomb just drops in a neighboring country, the price will just shoot up. So the verbal war, which started sometime towards the end of last year, and the prices started going up. So it's not just now, but this one is one of the major fundamental drivers which is pushing the price up globally. It is there. That one, you can't take it away from it. Now, issues of planning, those are the policy issue that we talked about, because if you are planning ahead, the reason you are planning ahead is only to stockpile. But we don't have stockpile of fuel in the country. We have less than 10 days of inventory. So you cannot hold back. This cannot stand in the absence of the policy, which we have talked about. And then he talked about the issue of the subsidies. The issue of the subsidies, yes, like I mentioned earlier on, different countries so far have started responding differently, depending on their capacities. In Zambia at the moment, what do we have? Do we have any subsidies or not? We have subsidies on fuel at the moment, and I mentioned that about 41% taxes plus, they are not in that price. They should have been reintegrated back in January, but government did not extend it.
Mr. Chikwanda, let me just, maybe when the Reverend called, he did not hear what you explained over the issue of the subsidies. So I'll ask you to just explain in the quickest possible time how this subsidy issue is coming in. Maybe if someone hears you, even now they are just joining, hear you say there is subsidy in fuel, everyone will be getting surprised because government says we removed subsidies. So
they're wondering, what is he saying? Why do we have to...
Let me clarify and deal with this matter once and for good. In the past 24 months, first of all, in the last 24 months, what did we see from government? The previous government, when the prices were to go up, they avoided price increases. So for 2 years, there was no price increase in Zambia from December 2019 up to the 2021. 2 years, no price increase in Zambia. Even when the fundamentals required that the prices must go up. How did the previous government manage? Here is what they did. Number one, they suspended in the coastline, which the Reverend was talking about, they suspended customs duty, 25%. Then they went in, suspended VAT, 16%. If you add these two, that's 41%. Then also excise duty suspended. If you add this, you are coming to about 45%. Taxes suspended. That's how they cramped the price in the same spot. Now, what is 45%? If you compute that over the pump price, you'll find that about $1 billion United States dollars was lost. The treasury could not get that money because the taxes were waived. That's about 17 billion. And if you take away 17 billion, it doesn't come to the treasury, service delivery is going to suffer. You are not going to recruit the civil servants. You are not going to do a lot of other debt. You are going to, the debt is going to go up because you are borrowing to finance that. And indeed, it showed under the previous government. We saw how they couldn't put people, civil servants on the payroll. They couldn't pay arrears. They couldn't, the debts continue to go up. In part, this is where things were going. That's 1 billion United States dollars spent, lost as a result of those subsidies. And now we have a new government comes in place and it takes over. I'm now explaining this in, hopefully somebody there is listening. In these taxes were waived for 1 year. So at the end of 1 year, coming 1st January, they were supposed to kick in. So the fuel pump price in January was supposed to go up by about 45%. It was going to shoot up by about 45%. But the government said no. They decided to waive these taxes and extended them up to June, end of June. They are not there.
June 2022.
Yes, end of June 2022. They are not there. So this new government also is going to lose about 9 billion kwacha just in a space of 6 months because of failure to collect due to these tax waivers on fuel. Now 9 billion is a lot of money, kwacha. If they dare extend from June to December, looking at the way the price is going up, they are also going to lose 1 billion United States dollars because that 9 billion will shift to, you double it, it will be about 18 billion kwacha, which is 1 billion United States dollar. Now, those are questions we need to do. We have really the capacity as a country to take 1 billion. That's almost the amount of money we're looking for from IMF.
Okay. You have
so now, in just less a minute as we close. So the subsidy that now government said we've removed, what is it? Because you've explained that there is this wave of about 45%.
There were, no, sorry, Prudence. There were subsidies happen at different levels. This subsidy that on the taxes is still there. Now, we also started seeing another situation emerging where the prices went up and then the industry at the beginning of this year, for instance, started failing to import fuel in the country. Because even with all these tax waivers, it was not enough. They were still landing the fuel at a loss because of the exchange rate. So here is what was happening, which the public doesn't know. They started to compensate the oil marketing companies for bringing fuel in the country. That is a figure which means that reported in over about 64 million kwacha, which reported in Parliament. They started to compensate the oil companies to just make them operate at a reasonable margin. Yes, because they said we cannot bring this. So yes, you have removed all these taxes, but still the prices are not okay. And here is our computations. Fuel is landing at a loss in the country. What does government do? They decide to start compensating them, giving them a rebate. That's another subsidy. So that is a subsidy which has been knocked out now. Let the reality be faced. But this other layer of taxes is still in place. Yeah.
Of course, that is Mr. Johnson Chikwanda, who's an energy expert, and we were discussing the fuel price increase in the country. We know that the Energy Regulation Board yesterday decided to increase the pump price by above 4 kwacha for petrol and diesel, and close to 4 kwacha for kerosene. Let us see where we have to go as an economy, even as the new administration tries to fix things that were not happening well in our economy. So Mr. Chikwanda has exhausted that topic. If you're just joining and you want to know more, you can still go through and watch this clip on our Facebook page, because we were also live on Facebook. So for me, and Mr. Chikwanda, and on behalf of my beautiful lady Miriam Kayeba and the entire production team, it's bye-bye till next time.